Good afternoon. My name is Richard Atwell, and I've got a brief presentation to share with you as I address this agenda item 6. Before I do, I want to quickly address the 3-minute rule. I realize that the CRD needs to conduct its business and it has a 2-hour window, but in the experience of speaking here many times, it is really difficult to create a 3-minute speech and get your point across. I would ask each of you to consider whether you can make your point to each other at the table within 3 minutes. I don't know how to resolve this. It was something that existed before as a 5-minute rule equal to what councils were doing. And then there was a November 14 meeting where 29 people came, and in that afternoon, that bylaw was passed, changing it to 5 minutes. So respectfully, truly, I would ask you to reconsider that rule. Given the number of people here today and the extra 20 minutes it would have taken in the month's worth of meetings, I think you're going to get quite a lot of value out of hearing those extra 2 minutes. All right, to my presentation. So thank you again. So the word biosolids has an interesting history. I spent a number of years living in the US, which is about 20 years ahead of Canada when it comes to enacting regulations around liquid and solid wastes, but no more advanced. In fact, you only have to look to the US to witness the problems that are coming our way, which is the case with biosolids. The term biosolids originated in the early 90s at the Water Environment Foundation, or the WEF. And the polling of its members produced 250 suggestions. Suggestions range from the inventive to the comical. Some examples were BioLife, BioSlurp, GeoSlime, the End Product, Humanure, NutriCake, etc. And they finally settled on biosolids. And this new name attracted a sarcastic comment from the Doublespeak Quarterly Review, edited by Rutgers University professor William Lutz. "Does it still stink?" Lutz asked. He said the new name probably won't move into general usage. It's obviously coming from an engineering mentality. It does have one great virtue, he said, though. You think of biosolids and your mind goes blank. Well, history proved him wrong in part in that it did indeed move into the vernacular. But what does it really mean? That part he got right. So where did the WEF come from? Well, the Water Pollution Control Federation changed its name to the Water Environment Foundation in 1960. Before that, it was called the Federation of Industrial Wastes Association and Sewage. Before 1950, it was called the Federation of Sewage Works, established in 1928. So a name change from the Federation of Sewage and Industrial Waste Association to the Water Environment Foundation. And this was necessitated by the introduction of the Clean Water Act in the US of 1972. This act was designed to protect inland water bodies from sewage, and this act had now created a new problem of what to do with the toxic sludge. So the US EPA altered its regulations in 1992, Part 503 of the act that regulates sludge application on farmlands. And it was at this time the term biosolids was introduced into the legislation, just 1 year after the WEF had coined the term. This simple word change had reclassified what was previously a hazardous waste under the regulations into a Class A fertilizer. The WEF then received a $300,000 grant from the EPA to educate the public about the beneficial uses of sludge. This euphemism was used to promote the spreading of sludge on fields, and you may be familiar with some of the trade names for the biosolids that were applied. Milorganite from Milwaukee is probably the most famous. Which brings us to the $64,000 question. What are biosolids? Well, they are the unwanted, contaminated byproduct of federal regulations. Just because the Ministry of Environment is going to okay land application doesn't mean that it's a good idea. We only have to look at the Cowichan fill dumping saga from 2 months ago and your support for protection of that water table to witness that. My advice, and based on the US history, is to let your previous decision banning land application to stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atwell.